right, welcome back. Time to mix it up in the day's other headlines. Double trouble for the Democrats, ethics scandals galore, plus new debate about so-called anchor babies and the lovely subject of illegal immigration. But we start with a double whammy hit for the Democrats as the party now braces for two possible ethics trials come this fall. Of course, midterm election right square in the middle of it. Representative Maxine Waters facing ethics violations for allegedly lobbying Treasury officials for bailout funds to a bank in which her husband has a financial stake. Did it matter that Hank Paulson was the former CEO of Goldman Sachs who was deciding about the... Anyway, the ethics trials for both Waters and Congressman Charlie Rangel are set to begin in September, putting Democrats on the defensive before the midterm elections.
Well, but these allegations are very troubling. And, you know, he's somebody who's at the end of his career, 80 years old. I'm sure that what he wants is to be able to end his career with dignity. And my hope is that happens.
When I came in, we said, we'll drain the swamp, and we did. We had passed the most sweeping ethics reform in the history of the Congress. Any personal respect and affection we may have for people makes us sad about the course of events, but we have to uphold a high ethical standard.
Well, Republicans, of course, licking their chops at the idea of public trials before the November vote. Joining us now, MSNBC contributor and Washington Post editorial writer Jonathan Capehart, along with David Sirota, syndicated columnist and author of the book Hostile Takeover. A pleasure to see you both. I look at this, hi guys, I look at this three ways. One, the Democrats, are they, how deep in the weeds are they? Two, is somebody picking on the Congressional Black Caucus? And three, is Nancy Pelosi full of it? She says she's going to drain the swamp, and the swamp can't even drain Charlie Rangel. I'll begin, though, with you, Mr. Capehart, on the Democrats. 1, 2, 3. At least they tell them what you're going to tell you. You got it? So the Democrats, how can they dodge this? Is there any way, from a political standpoint, that you can deal with this successfully?
Well, no, they can't dodge it in the sense that it's already out there. It's already big news. Charlie Rangel's investigations have been in the news for nearly 2 years. The fact that he couldn't come to a settlement with the committee, or wouldn't come to a settlement with the committee, means that we're, on the verge of having him in a public trial here in Congress. On September 13th, he's up for re-election, essentially, in the primary September 14th in New York, with Maxine Waters. The news breaking today that ethics charges are being filed against her, another high-profile member of the Democratic Party. No, this is not good for the Democrats.
David, is somebody picking on the Congressional Black Caucus?
No, I don't look at it that way. I mean, here's the thing. There's two issues here. First and foremost, I think when we talk about whether this is going to hurt the Democrats, let's not forget, I'm sitting here in Denver, Colorado, for instance. Most people out in the United States of America have no idea who Charlie Rangel or Maxine Waters is. That doesn't mean that the charges against them aren't real and aren't serious and shouldn't be investigated. But in terms of the political fallout. Secondly, I would also say that the way I look at this is that they are draining the swamp. The Democrats head the Ethics Committee. This is why the Democrats were elected, to clean out their own party, frankly. And this did not happen under Republican leadership. So I got to give at least some of the Democrats credit for moving forward with an investigation rather than doing what the Republicans did and simply bury their problems.
And you know what? David's absolutely right. I mean, I would have to disagree with your contention, Dylan, that Speaker Pelosi is full of it when she's saying that that's what they're doing. They're draining the swamp. The fact that we're talking about investigations, trials even, of two high-profile Democrats speaks to the sort of revived nature of the Ethics Committee. And, to another point, David said, when the Republicans were in charge, no one had heard of Mark Foley, the congressman from Florida, but it was that case there that gave the Democrats the hammer that they needed to show that it was time for a change in leadership and a time to, as Pelosi said, drain the swamp of corruption.
I guess the reason why I'm more critical of Pelosi than either of you two is by virtue of the fact that they can't get Rangel, for instance, to simply resign. It's an obvious political liability. He's been at it for a long time. He's an opportunity for a graceful exit. And still, they're looking at the prospect of a trial, which may be good for Charlie Rangel's ego, but there's no way that's good for the Democrats come the fall.
You put your finger on it.
But give her credit. Give her credit for nonetheless pushing forward. I would give her credit if she tossed him, David. I would give her credit if she was able to have a meeting and say, listen, kill this so we can move on with our lives so that the cable's not talking about Charlie Rangel. Dylan, I don't disagree with that. My only point is this: is that she could simply try to go to the ethics committee and tell those Democrats to back off. So I think just by virtue of having worked in the House, by virtue of them letting the process go forward, I think that's a statement unto itself.
I think your point is, well, I think we are both making valid points, if I don't say so myself. Next, some new momentum on the right for a constitutional amendment, not to end massive bank gambling or outsourcing of jobs to Chinese slaves, or the taxpayer bailouts of giant robotic automotive and financial schemes, but to get rid of so-called anchor babies. GOP Senators John Kyle and Lindsey Graham saying it's time to address the issue of children born on U.S. soil whose parents are illegal immigrants.
If both parents are here illegally, should there be a reward for their illegal behavior? That we should hold some hearings and hear first from the constitutional experts to at least tell us what the state of the law on that proposition is.
Well, right now the 14th Amendment says these children automatically get U.S. citizenship, but should the Constitution be changed? When you hear this sort of rhetoric, Jonathan, and you look at the sort of pantheon of problems in this country, corruptions and misalignments, and then you hear calls for a constitutional amendment to get the anchor babies, what thoughts run through your brain?
Mean-spirited. You know, that provision is there for a reason. It was put there mainly to ensure that the freed slaves would become citizens of the United States and wouldn't be denied citizenship. But also, you're right. There are other more important. Sorry about that. I don't know if you heard that, but there are more important issues facing the country: jobs, 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 and the economy first and foremost. And so the idea that you know, they're going to spend time on something as monumentally difficult as a constitutional amendment to do away with, quote, anchor babies, which is offensive in itself, it strikes me as wrong priorities.
David, take a listen to Sarah Palin on the president and immigration.
Jan Brewer has the cojones that our president does not have to look out for all Americans, not just Arizonans, but all Americans in this desire of ours to secure our borders and allow legal immigration to help build this country, as was the purpose of immigration laws.
David, you think she's right?
Well, I think the White House has not taken on immigration in any kind of comprehensive way. I think the Obama administration, we know from the data, has cracked down on employers in a way that's much more stringent than the Bush administration, and they've done a lot of factory raids, more raids than the Bush administration. But my problem with what the Obama administration hasn't done is that it hasn't looked at immigration comprehensively. Immigration is a problem of economic inequality between the United States and its neighbors. It's a problem of our trade policy. Those are the kinds of problems that the Obama administration, frankly, I don't think wants to discussed, because to have a really comprehensive discussion about immigration means to take on the people and the institutions, the corporate interests that want the status quo right now. Corporations want a cheap, exploitable pool of labor to exploit and to drive their wages down and force Americans into a competition with those wages.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wrap this up. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan. I hear you. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that it's bipartisan cowardice. Remember, President George W. Bush also tried to do this and got beaten down by his own base.
Yeah. At the end of the day, no one wants to deal with it. It's much easier to pretend the problem is something else too often than it is to actually admit what the problem is and then deal with it. And I think anchor babies is a classic example of that. Gentlemen, a pleasure. Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks, Dylan.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.